Dragon Shield sleeves are only $7.99 on flipsidegaming.com right now. And if you use the promo code CGB at checkout, you will save 10% and support the channel at the same time. So remember to use the promo code CGB. Hello and welcome back to another day in the arena. It's me, it's CGB, and hear me out. Just before you click dislike and turn it off, hear me out. So, Kenta Hirane finished in the top 8 of a recent GP running the Simic Nexus of Fate build, which Nexus is still legal in best of 3, which I can still play on Arena, although it looks all grayed out here. And this is the deck I got to Mythic with. I was doing a stream where I played the decks from the top 8, and this deck came up, and I didn't even realize how many matches I had won in a row, and the deck was absurdly powerful, of course. But I know how much we as an internet people seem to despise Nexus of Fate. So I'm going to make a slightly different video this time. It's going to be focused on a few things. One, how to beat Nexus of Fate. So I'm going to go out, play this, and when I lose, I'm going to try to focus on why I lost so that you can help learn how to beat the deck. I also tried to make a video like this by playing various decks on ladder that had good matchups with Nexus of Fate, but I never seemed to get paired against it, and I was saving my games. The idea was eventually I'd get enough games to make a video called How to Beat Nexus of Fate that would be me, your boy, just destroying Nexus of Fate over and over and over, and that would be hopefully the most liked video on my channel. But I just didn't get paired enough against it. And when I did, and I lost to it, like I would get mana screwed when I did get paired against it the one time. It was so tilting. It was so tilting, you guys. You have no idea. All right. But so we're going to play this, and if we lose, when we lose, why we lose, we're going to focus on basically what our opponent did right to beat Nexus of Fate. Basically, I'm going to play the bad guy, and our opponents are going to be the good guy, and we're going to talk about how they beat us. The other thing we're going to look at is the sideboard, because I actually think the sideboard for this deck is very interesting, and Kenta brought a very new take on the sideboard that I haven't seen anywhere else. So against Nexus of Fate, it's very common to board out your removal spells. But what's the best thing this deck wants to do? Ramp. And what are the best ramp spells for 2 mana? Creatures. So if the opponent boards out their creature removal, you can board in Druid of the Cowl and Incubation Druid and have, along with Growth Spiral, 9 2-mana ramp spells. It just speeds the deck up so much. I thought this was pretty genius. And often they can replace Root Snares because you don't really need them if you're going off a turn early and ramping that hard. You also have Hatsukan Archer, which takes out the mono blue flyers, Crushing Canopy and Sagittarius Volley to pick on Niv and other mono blue stuff. 2 Biogenic Ooze, so you can, after sideboard, you can turn into this Hydroid Crassus and Biogenic Ooze ramp deck, which is pretty, not gonna lie, that feels really cool. And you can decide whether or not you want to keep in Nexus of Fate and the Wilderness Reclamation combo. The most often sideboarded out cards for me would be Blink of an Eye against decks that have no expensive cards in them. So I can take Blink of an Eye out against, say, white aggro and red. And then the other cards I'll often cut are Root Snare against any kind of a mid-range deck. Anything that's not absolute aggro, I cut Root Snare. And I cut Opt against a lot of decks because I don't need like the filtering thinning anymore when my deck is comprised of a lot of good cards. Sometimes, very rarely, I cut the combo, but usually I leave the combo in. Okay, we're gonna go play some games. If we lose, we're going to focus on why we lost and how to beat the deck, and hopefully you find that useful. Well, this opening hand doesn't really do much that we want. It can stall reasonably well, and it has a reclamation, so there's a case for keeping it. If it draws a green, it's in pretty good shape. If it draws any land, Blink of an Eye with Kicker can help you get that green. It can stall with 2 Blink of an Eye. It's definitely not ideal, but on the play, I'm going to try this hand. Step 1 of beating Nexus of Fate. Get the opponents to keep sketchy hands. All right. Well, mono white is not what you want to see when you do keep a hand like that. But at least it's a Hunted Witness and not a Sky March or Aspirant. Here's a Dauntless, okay. And a tapped land. And it is the Azorius version, which is a problem. No attacks? I'm confused. I am going to fire this off just for the setback. Take them off the Venerated Loxodon or the Legion's Landing flip next turn. We draw a green source. Okay. Step 2 to beating Nexus. You might want to attack them. I would strongly recommend it. Venalish Marshal. Alright. That is a good card to bounce with Wilderness Reclamation next turn. So there's 2 from the Witness. So we'll play the Reclamation. It will untap our lands, and then we'll blink of an eye the Marshal. So a good, like some decks, not many, but some of the white decks do main deck a Spell Pierce or a Negate or 2. That would be so handy in a spot like this. So I am going to go, let's see, our opponent might be setting up, if they have a Conclave Tribunal, right? That'd be a very bad thing. So I'm going to take this damage and see what the opponent does. They play the Dauntless, sure. And they play a Snubhorn Sentry. So now at this point, they can tap 2 creatures and 2 lands to play a Tribunal if they have it. So this is an interesting spot where I could try to bounce the Bodyguard. But if I do that, if I go for that play, that won't be very good. All right, because they can sacrifice this and I don't draw the card. So here's the Tribunal. Tribunal for the Reclamation. Now I can bounce the Reclamation instead of the Tribunal. And I think I like that. So we'll kick there. It's also good to note that the opponent had good sequencing leading with the Bodyguard and not the Snubhorn Sentry, because I could have bounced the Snubhorn Sentry in response to the Bodyguard to take the opponent off Tribunal. Let's do it again. This time we're just holding up a Root Snare and hoping the opponent doesn't have another Conclave or a Deputy of Detention. It's a little scary. All right. White deck is ready. Here's a Root Snare for that. Staying alive. We didn't have to. We could have gone to 1. What I hate about that is that then we're forced to fog every turn for the rest of the game, whereas the Hydroid Crassus could still gain enough life at some point to pull us away from that, even though that's a bit unlikely. So the top deck Nexus of Fate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can play Search and Nexus. All right. The opponent's holding Timer with the Bodyguard. That's going to make for a lot of clicking. A lot of clicking. I don't think that there's a way that the white deck could have won this game without something like Spell Pierce or Negate in the main deck. I just think that I was in too good of a position. It's not over yet, but we're definitely about to go a bit of the distance with the combo, or at least we're going to get a Nexus going along with some Search for Iskanta. Yeah, it's definitely not over yet. But the Root Snare that they don't know about is a big problem for the white deck. We'll graveyard the land. Sinister Sabotage off the top. I suppose playing the Hydroid Crassus for 3 is about what we want to do. We're on 4 cards in graveyard. There's a Chemist's Insight. And now we'll get the untap from Reclamation. We'll have the Root Snare. Yeah, it's not quite over. We still need to have another good turn or 2. Baffling End in the main deck. Interesting. Is that worth countering? I suppose anything is kind of worth countering here because it can help us get back to another Nexus of Fate. Main deck Baffling End is pretty interesting as a metagame call. So this can produce a ton of mana. Is that really the answer? I think so, because it lets Chemist's Insight get so deep, so quick. I could have binned it though, but we'll be able to root snare, and then I wonder if that's a good keep. Beating Nexus, trick the opponent into bad keeps. All right, so if we block like here, we take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. If we block here, we take 5, 9, 12. I think I'll try that. I think it's okay. I have another Crassus in the deck. And this means I don't have to use the root snare this turn, so I can have another turn to play the Reclamation. Here's Benalia. Alright, search for Azcanta, library. End step, stop, second Reclamation. This will let us tap to produce a whole bunch of end step mana. So with these triggers on the stack, we'll tap this for mana, resolve, untap. We'll go for a Chemist's Insight before the second trigger resolves. An Opt and a Nexus, oh no. We hit the Nexus. All right, that buys us another turn sequence. Shuffle it back in. So with 7 cards in the graveyard, I don't need the upkeep stop. I was thinking I might need to opt to get one more card in the graveyard, but since we're on 7, anything here will let us flip the Azcanta. I'm going to keep the root snare because I don't think my opponent can beat it. I don't think they can beat my board anyway, but it's a fail-safe. And here we go. Yep. Whiff. And there was much rejoicing. Opt. Sabotage? I don't think so. Don't think that's good enough. We'll play other land. On end step, triggers. Tap for that blue. Resolve that. Do avoid the resolve all button. That's another way that you can beat this deck. They accidentally hit resolve all. All right. Untap there, search up. We got a growth spiral. I suppose I can grab that. There's an extra mana, so I'll cast the growth spiral. Drew the Nexus, but it's not going to happen this turn. In case our opponent does run a negate though, well, I guess I would want them to try to counter this. No, I would die. So yeah, we'll upkeep this in case our opponent does randomly run a negate. And here comes another knight. Conclave Tribunal off the top, going after one of the reclamations. May as well. And here we go. Here we go with another one. It's too much mana. It's just too much mana. Here's the Azcanta. Let's go grab Nexus again. Resolve the first one. Play another Nexus. Make sure we also tap for mana after this shuffles back in. And this is probably game. It's all about how long the opponent wants to play this one out now. It's hard to imagine fizzling from here. Let's use the Azcanta. And we hit another Insight, which we can then cast. Drawing 2. There's the other Crassus. And we'll go to our next turn. Play a Crassus. We'll go for 7, I guess. It's 1 turn less of a clock than 6. Hopefully that stop on the end step works out here. Okay. Resolve. Let the drama continue. Here's the Nexus of Fate. And that's the scoop. And it's a deserved scoop for sure. So, what does white do? White should be looking at any kind of negates that they keep in the sideboard. Spell Pierce 2. With that idea, they're definitely not going to take out cards like Baffling End, I believe. They might keep them for Crassus, but that seems very weird to me. So in this case, I do think we can bring in the creatures. The ramp creatures, at least. I don't know that I want the flyers. The canopies can be very, very good against the opponent and their Conclave Tribunals. And do I want another Hydroid Crassus? Maybe. So the cards that I don't want are Sinister Sabotage. This card is too slow and not what you want to do against a white aggro deck. Blink of an Eye was better than I expected it to be, but I still don't think it's where I want to be. And yeah, we're going to cut that, and we're also going to... Precognitive Perception's a bit slow. It's a bit slow. So I'm actually thinking, though, that trimming Opt and one Precognitive Perception will hopefully do the job. Maybe Canopy, maybe we just don't worry about the Conclave Tribunals. I mean, it is annoying when they take out the Wilderness Reclamation, but this is a bit too reactive and doesn't do enough. And I should be a lot more worried about Negate than that. Yeah, I guess Blink of an Eye is game against both creatures and the Tribunals. It sort of has the same effect. It's interesting. I'm going to stick with this for now. Alright, we have a ramp creature, a reclamation, and Blink of an Eye, so let's try it out. Here comes something. Sky Marcher. Much better assertive card than last time, but the 1/3 Druid of the Cowl, some people have pointed out, like, why do you have Incubation Druid and not Druid of the Cowl? Some people mentioned that on stream yesterday. Well, Druid of the Cowl against Shock was the first place where I noticed where I wanted Druid and not Incubation Druid. But this is definitely another spot where you look at the 1/3 body and you say, oh my. Oh my. And yet, the Venerated Loxodon is there to fix it, but we are ready with a Wilderness Reclamation. Beating the Negate to the battlefield as well. Here's Tide Taker. Do I want to bounce? Do I want to bounce anything now? I think I let that resolve. I'll either pay 2 for the Opt or 3 for the Blink of an Eye if the opponent has Conclave Tribunal. Alright, no fog yet. I don't know if you want Elephant... I don't know if you want Loxodon after board against this deck, because taking a turn off from attacking this deck seems so bad. I do need the land. Alright. We could play a Baby Crassus just to get a card. We could also Growth Spiral and have... We could Blink of an Eye something and have Root Snare available. It's important to remember that things on the opponent's turn will cost more. We can also Nexus of Fate right here, right now. So let's put a stop on the end step. We're not gaining a ton from a Nexus of Fate here, though. Not a lot, but we may as well. So, trigger on. Green, resolve. Our opponent could have a counter. If it's a Spell Pierce, we're playing around it. And if they counter here, we can blink, say, the Venerated Loxodon, so our opponent isn't presenting lethal next turn. Okay, no counter. Growth Spiral. Okay. Bonus turn. Second Wilderness. The opponent might, yeah, they might still have something, some kind of a counter effect. So we want to play something in this mana window. What do we want it to be? May as well be the Blink of an Eye or the Growth Spiral. Let's add the mana first and then resolve the second trigger so we play around like Spell Pierce. I think I'm going to go for the Growth Spiral. At least see what we get. Okay, another land. Happy to put that down. And now from here we can use the Blink of an Eye. Now what to use it on? Probably the Venerated Loxodon, as we don't mind our opponent fogging themselves. So let's see, what do you have? Ooh, they do have a negate, and that's what they saved it for. I don't like that play. I don't like that play. I hope you have another one. If they have another one for this root snare, they're doing it. So what do we have for a block? We can block here. Take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's see first if the root snare resolves before we declare our blockers. And yeah, save your negate for the crucial card. Be patient. Like, really be patient. It's very important. Oh my. Alright, so let's play our Hydroid Crassus for 4. And it doesn't look like anything on the end step here to enjoy. So we're buying some time. Here's the Dauntless. What should it protect? The elephant? Yeah, so I can't trade the Hydroid Crassus with the elephant. So what am I taking? I can take 8 points here and block the Sky Marcher. I think that's a good play. And this is why Hydroid Crassus is such a beast here, because when it pushes, you out of the need to root snare, the root snare becomes a way to buy yet another additional turn. Okay, well, we want to resolve our Wilderness Reclamation again. That's a lot of bonus mana. And we'll go for a Search for Azcanta. Our opponent's either thinking incredibly hard or they've taken to the full-on rope mode, as they burned 2 timeouts already, and you see that looming 0 as the clock winds down. Alright, I'm also playing Azcanta. I guess I'm planning a fog, so I should attack with the Crassus. So triggers on, resolve, first things first, insight, tap for blue, resolve again, insight, tap for mana. I guess actually the mana doesn't matter anymore because we're out of triggers and there's nothing to play. So your turn. If they drew the negate here, they can win the game. For all the drama, they could just win the game because I didn't do the upkeep stop. I should have upkeep stop root snared there. So we will see. The deck can fizzle. It happens. And we'll see if this is the moment. Our opponent drew 1 negate. Can they find a second one? All right, they have 0 timeouts left. It appears that they've left the building, but it is worth noting, if they had drawn a negate here, the game could be over. And I think the game would have been over if they had saved the negate and allowed the reclamation previously. And that's game. This hand is alright. We have a turn 2 Search for Azcanta. So if that leads us to another land, we're doing what we need to do. Our opponent took 1 mulligan. They've scryed to the bottom. And it's a Watery Grave. Alright. Blue-black. Maybe it's Esper missing a color. So I'm going to test them on turn 2 with a Search for Azcanta, and it looks like there's no negate home. So, and yeah, this is trouble. They're stuck on 2 mana. That's not good. All right, Root Snare doesn't look like it's a card we need in any way for this particular matchup, and land will allow Chemister's Insight. All right, Sultai. Not what I expected. A Golgari Queen to take out the Search for Azcanta. All right, so in response to that, we'll play the Blink of an Eye with Kicker and get the search back. And Vraska is going to need a turn to reload. There's a lot to be said about now only playing the search if we can flip it in time, whereas instead I could be using Chemister's Insight and holding up Sinister Sabotage. But the Vraska will hit it eventually anyway. Yeah, I think we play this out anyway. We could try to save it till we're going off. That would be interesting, but I don't think it would be particularly great. Now, we could get up to 5 and then 6. I'm going to put an upkeep stop. If we sabotage whatever our opponent does, we might be able to flip this as Kanta next turn. Chupacabra. Yep, sabotage it. Flip whatever we see. Just please don't be Wilderness Reclamation.
Everyone is expendable.
So we're on 5. With the trigger on the stack, because of our upkeep stop, we'll play the Chemister's Insight, draw 2 cards. And I see an opt. If I play the opt, I can flip it no matter what. I would hate to send away a Wilderness Reclamation, so I'm going to use the opt here. And I'll put this on the bottom because I don't really want it now. It's one of our win cons. And we did draw the Reclamation, so this is going to pay off. And we can graveyard. I think we graveyard the land. Despite having a growth spiral. There's a transform, so it's no longer can be targeted by Vraska. And we'll play... Second island doesn't play growth spiral, so we'll play the tap land and say go. And wow, did we come out of that turn. We came out of that turn with a flipped Iskanta Sunken Ruin. Here's an Incubation Druid from the opponent. A +2. And not sacrificing land. Oh my. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's go for the first Wilderness Reclamation and the second. Resolve 1. Let's play Nexus of Fate. The opponent does not even want to know. They don't want to see it. They see the Iskanta, and that's not a bad scoop. It's going to be almost impossible to come back. So, what do we do? I don't think that pulling the Reclamation out is good. Like, the combo is very good against our opponent. I do think we can pull Root Snare because their deck is too slow. I think they're going to take out things like Chupacabra, so we could play our ramp cards, which is probably really good against them. Is negate necessary? I don't think so. I don't think I don't think we need to fight on that axis. But it's sabotage is pretty good too. Having an extra Crassus just so that they're not all exiled by like Vraska's Contempt or something is probably wise. We could also play Ooze, just ramp into Ooze and overpower them. That's interesting. So Precognitive Perception is one I like to trim, but I also like to trim Opt when I've really like smoothed out my deck like this and made all the cards good. I don't know that Blink of an Eye is very good though. I can't think of a card that Blink of an Eye is particularly good against. So I'm going to pull that out of the deck. And yeah, I think an Opt can go. Just one. And then we'll head back into battle. Trying to think of other things that I might be missing. Our opponent might be using Duress, but that's a good reason to have more creatures in the deck and ramp creatures. Sinister Sabotage hits more things. I don't want to be too counter heavy against a deck with Duress and Negate in it. So yeah, I think this is the build. Oh wow. I feel like I see no land all the time. I don't feel like I see this every day. And this hand is too slow. Like, unnervingly slow. But I don't think I can mulligan much lower, and any ramp cards we draw are live, so I'm going to try it. It does basically nothing. I really do need to scry into a ramp card. It's kind of an absurd draw. All right, last chance for a ramp card off the top next turn. Branch Walker. So there's the clock with the Jade Light Ranger on top. So the opponent kept the Explorer package, or at least this part of the Explorer package. Let's see how big the Jade Light Ranger is. Just a 2/1. That's probably a bit of a heartbreaker. Although the Pain land there implies that they needed the land anyway. Okay, you're late, but I accept you. Especially against that Jade Light Ranger. And here's another Jade Light from the opponent. 2 more land. Looks like Druid of the Cowl gets to do work. But I think I'm playing the Biogenic Ooze. I think we're just gonna ooze them really hard here. And if they have a handful of negates, what's that gonna do against Biogenic Ooze? Duress, go ahead. This is what the creature package does to decks that load up on Duress and Negate. So, should you leave in removal against Nexus of Fate? It's a tough call, and it's a lot easier when you're up a game, but when you're down a game, it's a really hard thing to come up with. All right, Thief of Sanity. They're binning the Thief of Sanity. No blocks. My ooze will be bigger than those Branch Walkers in a hot minute. So I can't Nexus yet, and my opponent knows about it. So I can play this, make another ooze, grow my oozes. Basically takes the opponent's attacks away. Here's Vivian, so another card that would like be rock solid against Wilderness Reclamation.
You can't stop nature.
But we're on the ooze plan. Okay. So we can Nexus of Fate now. Can get an attack. It's going to be hard for our creatures to break through. We can play Incubation Druid and adapt it. That can make a lot more oozes next turn. And Vivian Reed, not sure what you're even going to find. You might find Thief of Sanity. If I attack, the opponent's just going to gang up on the creatures. They can block here, block here. I think it's better if I let them grow larger. So I'm going to play you. And I'm going to adapt you. But I can wait to do that. Well, I guess my opponent wouldn't have a moment of craving in this deck. So we're just going to move to next turn.
Meet my newest friend.
And it is a Crassus. Right now that's a 4/4, possibly 5/5. That's pretty big. And the opponent can't resist it, so here we go. 5-power Crassus, alright. Would you like to attack? Because I would really enjoy that. Alright, let's adapt Incubation Druid. To give us just a ton of mana. Now we should be able to make an ooze and Nexus of Fate. So let's do that. And crank out another ooze. So, attack now or attack next turn? I suppose I can throw these in now. They do get bigger on end step. So how does the sizing affect things? The opponent's likely just in a chump position anyway. The Crassus can trade straight up with this ooze, so let's just go to next turn. Throw Spiral. We're on 8 mana now. Nope, make it 12, so we can crank out 3 oozes, which is pretty impressive. Let's attack the opponent with this set of oozes, or at least attack their Vivian Reed. The problem is they can get the largest oozes off the battlefield with the Finality, but I don't think that's in their deck anymore. I shouldn't have attacked with the 3/3. That was an oops. I meant to only attack with a 6/6 and 5/5, and then I started saying something and I blanked. We'll see how much that costs me.
Now we're getting started.
All right, so ooze, ooze, green mana, ooze. Oops. Okay, a few oopses in a row here. Well, that kind of worked. Oh man, how to beat Nexus of Fate. Get your opponent to oops a lot.
The wilds are my shield.
Only 2 cards in the graveyard. This is not an intimidating as Kanta at this point in the game. The opponent with an absolute full grip and me with 0. Let's see what happens. The opponent could go for lethals. I mean, they have a Hydroid Crassus. I am on 9 life. So they could attack this turn and hope to be able to do it again next turn, which could work out. It could definitely happen. It's a lot of careful tapping. Vraska's Contempt stayed in the deck. Interesting. We don't have any Planeswalkers, so the opponent did keep their removal package. And an Assassin's Trophy. And no attacks. Huh. I'm surprised by that. I'm going to try drawing some cards. I probably need to do better. Alright. We could attack all here. The opponent would chump, eat, chump if they wanted Vivian to live. Let me see what happens first and foremost if I Chemist's Insight. We could draw into a Wilderness Reclamation. There is a Sinister Sabotage. Alright. Let's play a Forest untapped. Now that I know how it works with Ooze. And this way we hold up Insight or Sabotage. Let's see how much the opponent wants Vivian to live. Okay, with the chump block, the opponent, like, I'm kind of leaving a lethal on the battlefield, but since I have the Sabotage, I wasn't worried about it, but the opponent's willing to defend Vivian to the death. She's good at producing chump blockers, so I get it.
Come to me.
Jade Light Ranger. Sure. Not a big deal, I don't think. Thief of Sanity, are you ready to stay? Alright, the opponent kept the Thief of Sanity this time. I need to draw my own Hydroid Crassus, by the way. Another dork. Okay. If there's nothing worth killing, I'll just Chemist's Insight, so it's not a huge loss. Okay. Still not attacking. I would have definitely put myself, like, put the Nexus deck on a clock. You need to kill it. Like, you are not the control deck. Oh my. Oh my. So Vivian can shoot down the Crassus. That is true, but it can draw so many cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11. So let's make it 10 and leave the Druid of the Cowl available. Roar. Rather than play a tap land here, I think having another Incubation Druid is perfectly fine. And I mean, I don't need to attack with this Ooze anymore, right? Well, my opponent drops the Vivian Reed to 1 to kill my Crassus. I'm gonna wish I'd pressured them. If they want to give up 2 bodies to take out the 6/6 here, they can. Ooh, okay. That's unique. So maybe the opponent does have like a Find Finality still in the deck, which would surprise me. Like post-board, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
The wrath of Scala.
But it's possible. All right, 2 land. I do think it's likely our opponent has some negate still backlogged here, but we can sabotage it pretty cleanly. All right, there's the Thief. I still think the opponent should be more aggressive. I feel like this Jadelight Ranger should be attacking. So whether or not to start going for Nexus of Fate. I don't want the Thief to hit me, of course, but it feels like if these resolve, I can start doing all kinds of nonsense. So let's start there. May I has this Nexus? Okay, that resolved. So now let's adapt you. So there's nice big mana available. Let's draw some cards. We got the Reclamation now. 2 mana doesn't do anything here, so I can play my Memorial to Genius. Which I should just start calling Memorial to Gary over a meme on Twitch, if anybody's watching that and gets it. All right, let's see what happens if I attempt a Wilderness Reclamation. Negate. All right, let's attempt a Sinister Sabotage on your negate. Let's put a stop on the end step. So what else do I want to play in my main phase? I guess I can draw some cards first to see what else I draw that I might need to play on the main phase, like a second Reclamation. So anything that draws cards here is probably the best thing to do. Druid of the Cowl, you can go. All right. Let's flash back a Chemisters. I do think the game is in the bag. I suppose I can Growth Spiral here. We'll get the tap lands done. And then we will Nexus of Fate. And we'll Chemisters again. Now we can discard Sabotage. We won't need it any longer. So how could the opponent have pulled this one off? I really don't know. The Ooze did a lot of damage, but I feel like they could have been a lot more aggressive. You have to be aggressive against this deck. You cannot control it. Given time, it will run away with the game. What is this, a 16? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Draw 9 cards. Okay. Make sure we put that at stop in. Hoo-ah! And that's the scoop. But there were so many, so I'm confident that there was a stage there. If my opponent had attacked me twice with that 5/5 Hydroid Crassus when I did not have a flying blocker, and I was on the Ooze plan, I think they could have won. So be aggressive. Be aggressive. So 2 green mana is not a keep. And I suppose this will have to be a keep, but I don't need second Nexus right now. More 7 drops. Not what the deck is looking for. Mono blue, maybe? Hello indeed. All right, let's try to set up the Growth Spiral. I'm going to try it on the opponent's upkeep if they don't make a move during my turn, and try to play it around a Spell Pierce, or at least cost them mana next turn. All right, they're going for something now. So I will Growth Spiral in response, and we'll get the tap land out of the way. Is it Curious Obsession time? Peanut butter jelly time? All right. So, if my opponent is wise, they don't have to play any more creatures. They don't have to do anything but counter my spells. Of course, if they don't draw any counter spells, that is a problem. They play Fairy Duelist. Well, I'm not going to try to counter this. This is an interesting flash card that's working its way into the deck. When it enters the battlefield, a creature an opponent controls gets -2/-0. Alright, so upkeep I'm going to attempt a Root Snare just to keep my opponent from drawing more cards. And hopefully they also forget to attack. But don't forget to attack, kids. You need to keep attacking or your Curious Obsession falls off. It reads, if you don't attack, it goes away. Alright, well, double Obsession. What do I need here? Oh, they forgot to attack. They forgot to attack. Yeah, that is oops. Oh my goodness, don't do this. Whatever you do, don't do this. You always attack anyway. But that's why also I Root Snare like early, so they kind of get in their head that there's no point in attacking, and maybe you can Jedi Mind Trick them. Oh my goodness. That's so brutal. Alright, take that beat. Opponent goes for Tempest Shin. I'll go ahead and counter, or at least try to counter Tempest Shin. If the opponent should not spend a counter spell here. Okay. I pay 2. Is this I feel for my opponent. Perhaps it's their first day on mono blue. I'm going to keep this because I definitely need some card quantity, and I'm just going to main phase it instead of slow rolling it in case I have a tap land I want to play because of it. First day on mono blue, possibly. So brutal. I mean, you definitely hold Quench there because eventually I'm going to try to cast this 7 casting cost spell. Storm Tamer, okay. Oh my gosh, this is such a what not to do game. Our opponent could have something to like counter this Crassus, but if it resolves, it's just game. So I'm trying to think if I'd rather Nexus, and I think I'd rather set up a Nexus. So I'll go to end turn, your turn. Before your draw step, I would like to Nexus of Fate so that next turn I has 2 turns, so I can play Crassus and then untap, hopefully, and get to use the cards right away. And the opponent didn't counter it. I'm gonna wish they had that Quench. All right, that's not a land off the top. It's interesting though, because I could play this main phase and play around a Quench and get that Scry 3 and try to set up. I think I like that better than Crassus here. Oh, wow. And we have another turn after this one? Yeah, that's really good. That is obscene. All right, we'll play you and go for Reclamation. Make sure we put that end step stop. Wizard's Retort. Our opponent did find their counter. Unfortunately, we got to do them one better. Which is one of the problems. The longer the game goes, the more Wilderness Reclamations your Nexus opponent finds, the less it matters if you have 1 counter spell. But man, would that Quench have been nice. All right, we'll play this. Let's put a stop. And we'll play this for 6. Yep. And play this tapped. Say go. Resolve the trigger. I could say go, but I may as well Insight now. Just see what we get. All right, and we'll pass. But now our opponent's creatures are dramatically outclassed. They're drawing off the top. We have a counterspell and a million cards in hand. It's really gross. It's like obscenely gross. The Curious Obsessions, why? So this is an excellent how not to beat Nexus video that hopefully we can all learn from. End step, I'll go for another one. Can discard this Shockland because the versatility and the mana isn't as important as it entering untapped. We've got plenty of mana available. Another Nexus. Stop on end step. Wilderness Reclamation number 2. Resolves. How about Search for Azcanta? Resolves. And Charge. Fairy Duelist. Okay. There was some risk to a Merfolk Trickster, but I could always Root Snare the situation. Alright. Just to make the mana easy on myself, I'm just going to do this now. Alright, first one up. Resolve. Let's Nexus. And then Growth Spiral. Oh no. Oh no. Oh my. Just hitting on all cylinders right now. Resolve second trigger, Nexus. And we'll also pitch the Memorial to Genius. And we got 11 cards in the graveyard, so this is going to transform. And yeah, this one's over. As long as my clicking doesn't become absolutely terrible. I'll try to wrap it up quickly. Try to show some form of mercy. And maybe our opponent can come back, because this should be a tough matchup for my deck. Maybe the opponent, after sideboarding, can still get back in this one and recover from some of the what the hell was that moments. All right, we're opting. We're down to 20 cards in deck, so I don't think it's even possible for me to miss. That'll be fun. And now search. We also have a bonus turn still in the wind from Nexus. So, and that's going to be game 1. All right, against mono blue, we want the canopies, and because I expect them to board in a lot of the negates, we want the creature package. This is where the Archer is a really handy sideboard tech, and we want the mana creatures. I don't want to fight over their spells, because I think that's playing their game. They have Spell Pierce, they have Negate. I have Negate, I have Sabotage. That's not the game I want to compete on. I like Blink of an Eye because it can still blow up their Curious Obsessions, and despite the trick working, I don't think that Root Snare is where I need to be anymore. Another really expensive, clunky spell that's hard to resolve against them is the Perception, so that's going to get the cut. I'm going to cut Opt because I've kind of made my deck much more full of cards that I wish to draw, and I could probably get away with cutting a Chemister's Insight, as it's also a bit slow, but maybe a Search for Azcanta is the better pick there, as we have a lot more creatures in our deck now. So I'm going to trim a Search for Azcanta, and I think that's the build I want to present. On the draw, we're definitely not favored. We're going to need an Archer pretty early, maybe Blink of an Eye to hit that Curious Obsessed creature despite like all the protection they could have for it. Ramping into Ooze should be good, but really being on the draw here should be really tough for me. That's a lot of blue mana. And not any kind of interaction. We have a ramp spell, but we'd have to draw green to get it. It's pretty bad, so I have to mulligan you. What is up with the Search for Azcantas? I even cut one, right? I think I did. So because of Growth Spiral, it's very tempting to keep this and ramp straight to 4. But then what do I do when I'm there? I don't actually have anything. So I need some better cards. Turn 1 Terramander. Our opponent does run Terramander. I was wondering if the Fairy Duelists were replacing that for some reason. Curious Obsession. The opponent should now only play counter spells. All right. Well, that's why. Maybe they didn't have a Spell Pierce or a Dive Down, but still, that's a big deal. Here's a Tempest in. That can be a big deal. And a good clock. I think we'll Growth Spiral. Put you on the battlefield, then play you, then play Search. So we've got a good amount of mana, but we need to draw... Well, I don't know. This whole draw just didn't really come together, did it? Although that blink of an eye was clutch. All the ramp spells aren't any good right now. I guess we need Crassus? Ooze. I don't even really want to show this to my opponent if I'm probably losing the game. Ooze, more like lose, am I right? Alright, so no spells. I guess I keep it, I play it, then what happens? What do I draw to get out of this? I can't draw a Nexus from this spot. I'm dead in 2 turns. So I need to draw a removal spell to stay alive, but the Storm Tamer covers that. So I do have to graveyard this and hit Wilderness Reclamation into Nexus, which, not very likely. I guess I will try Second Search just to throw something in the graveyard and to test my opponent for the negate, which it doesn't look like they have. So now we can draw Nexus next turn to prolong the game and try to go on an endless loop of some kind. Down to 4. So I play you, I don't necessarily lose. Alright, we'll try it. We will try it. 4-5. And if the opponent has the counter, it's over. Archer. Retort. Alright, they've got this one. So, good job getting creatures down there. Running me over. Now, it's my turn to try to repay the favor. They play that deck so aggressively. So, this is one of those cases where I think that the Root Snare is not good in the matchup. But the way my opponent plays the deck is so aggressive that I think I'm actually that Ooze is too slow. Iskanta might be too slow. I mean, because I could bring in the snares again. And yeah, I'm not putting as many things in the graveyard now, so let's try it without Iskanta. I know Iskanta is like a key piece, but with Crassus and Insight, I think I can still draw plenty of cards and make it work. Also with Memorial to Genius, so we're going to try it like this. The opponent doesn't seem to hold back creatures ever, so I think that's a good reason to bring Snare back. Another mulligan. The mulligans, so many, they're so real. Our opponent took one as well. That's bottom. We really need to draw a basic land to go with this Hinterland Harbor. It's not a 1-drop obsession. Okay. Well, you're telling me there's a chance. Crassus, that's the wrong time to draw Crassus. Second blue. Siren Storm Tamer. Alright. I think it's better to go for the Druid of the Cowl here. That hesitation is probably a dive down or another opt. And now we can be confident it is a dive down. Or something I'm missing, which happens. Tempest Jin right to the battlefield. Yeah. So, I need to hit land. I feel like bouncing the Jin, though, is kind of a time walk for myself. So I'm going to do it. Because if I wait, it's the most expensive thing I can bounce. And if I wait, my opponent will have Storm Tamer to protect it. So this is like a way of drawing another land. Or hopefully getting another draw step for another land, much like Growth Spiral was going to try to do anyway. Oh my goodness. Well, Well, how to beat Nexus of Fate. Get the mana screwed. Get a mana screwed. I don't think there's anything useful for me to do. I can try to bounce this Jhin, but the opponent can counter that. I can go for a Root Snare, but the opponent can counter that. I think that's better than playing a Crassus for 1, which might be the best play to actually block. But since I'm not facing lethal yet, yeah. We'll go for the Root Snare. All right, untap. Let's go for the Snare. Boom. Opponent just sitting on that. Very excited to negate this. But it does make sense to negate Root Snares when you can. As long as the clock is still really good. In this case, it's still a 2-turn clock. The opponent says good game. Yeah, I'll say good game too. But I think I'm not dead. If that had come into play untapped. But it didn't. And it looks like they got there despite those first game jitters. Thanks to excessive mana screw on our part. I hope you'll forgive me for making one more Nexus of Fate deck. I hope that approaching it from the standpoint of what not to do and how to beat the deck is more useful to those of you who despise it. And in general, I think that there's always a lot to learn in victory or defeat. Usually victory is more fun and more flashy and is better for basically retaining an audience on YouTube. But sometimes you've got to dive into beating a deck because, quite frankly, I'm going to be honest with you all out here. A lot of people play really badly against Nexus. A lot of wins, like they get salty that they're playing Nexus. I get that. They get salty that it's even a deck, that it even exists. I get that. But that's not an excuse to play badly against it. And a lot of you could probably beat Nexus more with a bit more knowledge. So hopefully we're sharing a little bit of that and it helps. Thank you for watching this video. As always, I will see you in the next video. If you like this video, remember to hit the like button. Remember to subscribe to the channel. We're closing in on 17,000, mind-blowing. And I will see you next time. Goodbye. Mana necklaces have arrived at hauntedflower.com. These necklaces are a great way to show your favorite MTG colors. Remember to use the promo code CGB at checkout to save 10%. That is promo code CGB on hauntedflower.com.